A story from God for his people. And when Jesus was young, this is a story that he also heard. Let us begin. David was Jesse's youngest son, and he had 7 brothers. He was really young in his smooth cheeks and fair features. He couldn't even grow a beard. Since he was the youngest, he took care of the sheep. When he's out in the pastures, he feels so good. It's so quiet that he can hear the Lord speaking to him, guiding him, and protecting him.
The Lord is my shepherd. He gives me everything I need.
It's wonderful to be out in the green pastures or walk along the waters alone with the Lord.
He lets me lie down in the green fields of grass. He leads me beside quiet waters. He gives me new strength.
The sheep mostly stay together and graze on the grass, so he's got lots of time to enjoy the beautiful mountains and breathe in the fresh air. He has time to practice with his sling. Over and over he throws rocks, and he got really accurate with it, especially with those smooth stones, you know, the kind that you get out of a brook. It's a good thing because one day, when it was getting dark, he heard the sheep. Bah, bah, the sheep were really loud and they're running from something fast. And then David ran over with his sling and saw that a bear was trying to take one of the smaller sheep. He placed one of his best stones in the sling. Then David swung it around and around over his head and released the stone, and then thud. He hit the bear on the head. The bear looked up with surprised, wide eyes. He was able to get the sheep back into the herd. He was afraid, but he knew, and this is where the congregations part comes in. What did David know? That's right. Let's try that again. The Lord is with me. That's your part. See, I told you I was going to mix this up on you a little bit. What did David know?
The Lord was with him.
Now you got the hang of it. Now I'm still going to get you about 4 or 5 more times yet. And knowing that the Lord looks over him like a shepherd, it comforted him. There was another time that he was walking the sheep in the valley, and he felt he was in a shadow of death when a large lion tried to take a sheep. But again, the Lord was watching over him and protected him, and he was able to get the sheep back. David liked being out with the Lord.
I am sure that goodness and love will follow me for the rest of my life.
Because the Lord is always with David. It was just like at home for David.
And I will live in the house of the Lord forever.
Listen. David would have to listen closely because sometimes his father, Jesse, would call down and he'd have to get back out of the mountains and back to his house. Then he would ask one of the others to attend the sheep until he came back. His 3 oldest brothers were in King Saul's army and helped protect his country of Israel when the Philistines invaded. His father was concerned and wanted to know if his brothers were okay. So he's going to take 10 loaves of bread, 10 cheeses, and parched corn to the captain so he can talk to his brothers. Did you ever breathe in deeply the fresh smell of bread and cheese? It's so good. He knew that they would enjoy it. He could hear the armies up ahead and see the Israelites on top of the mountain. David walked a little faster to get up to the top to give the food to the captain. Wow. Wouldn't it be exciting? It is something he'd never seen before. David looked down in the valley, saw the armies lined up for battle. And up on top of the next mountain were the Philistines' tents. He was excited, so David ran down the mountain to see his brothers. Come on! On the way down, he noticed the men seemed frightened and kept looking up the mountain towards the Philistines. And right then, a huge man came out. All the Israelites turned and ran. Just like sheep, they were frightened by a bear. He was huge. He's the biggest man that he had ever seen. Twice the size of him. 6 cubits. And back then, they didn't have rulers or yardsticks, they measured with what they called a cubit. And so it was from a man's tip of his elbow up to the tip of his longest finger. So they measured that out, and we think of that as being about 18 inches, maybe 22 inches. And so that works out to be about 9 feet, or maybe just a little bit over 9 feet. David found out this giant's name. It's Goliath. It was fascinating. David just stood there mesmerized. He had lots of armor on. He was yelling very loud, saying, "Why should your whole army battle with us? Choose one of your men to fight me. If I win, you will be our servants. If I lose, we will be your servants." David walked back up the mountain and talked to several groups of men and found out that no one wanted to fight the giant. They also told him that if someone kills the giant, King Saul will make the man rich, allow him to marry his daughter, and pay all of his family's bills. But still, no one would fight him. Goliath has been doing this every morning and every evening for the past 40 days, just taunting, teasing the men, like poor, frightened sheep. David felt bad for them. And he said, "Why should this wicked Philistine bother us?" David would go out and kill him. The soldiers were surprised and told him how mean the terrible Goliath was. But still, David was willing. Then one of the soldiers went to tell the king that finally someone offered to fight Goliath. Well, then his oldest brother, Eliab, came over to him and yelled, "Why did you come here?" He guessed that he made his biggest brother feel embarrassed. Then taunting him, he said, "And who's taking care of the sheep while you're gone? Did you just come here to watch the battle?" Well, he didn't know what to do. He was just trying to help because he knew that he could help. He knew. What did David know?
The Lord was with him.
He just didn't understand. So he asked his brother, "What did I do to make you angry?" But right then a messenger came to take him back to see the king. The king. Wow. He never talked to the king before. This made him nervous. He was sure that the king is very happy that someone is now going to fight Goliath and save Israel. When David got in the presence of the king looked rather disappointed. Maybe the king didn't know that he was so young, but David said to him, "Don't let anyone be afraid of Goliath. He would fight him." The king walked over to him, looked down, and the king's really big. He's nothing compared to Goliath. And in disbelief, the king said, "You cannot fight against the Philistine. You're just a boy." Goliath had been fighting for a long time and is always winning. He knows all kinds of things to win that you don't know. Surely he thought that he would lose. But David told him about the bear and the lion when he was protecting his sheep and compared Goliath to the wild bear. He said, "The Lord who helps me protect my sheep and help me defend the Philistines will be with me." The king agreed and said, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." And then the king gave me his armor to wear to protect him. And he put the brass helmet on and a really heavy metal coat. Then he picked him up, his sword, and gave it to me. And then David could barely walk, let alone swing his arm for the sling. He felt bad for the king, turned him down, and told him that he just couldn't wear all that armor. He's just not used to it. David started off to the battlegrounds with his staff and sling.
He guides me in the right paths in the honor of his name.
Along the way, David walked beside still waters of a brook. which reminded him of the green pastures back home with his sheep. He knew. What did David know?
The Lord was with him.
He stopped for a moment, and David knelt down and prayed. He also picked up 5 stones and put them in a bag. As David walked down the mountain into the valley, he could sense the tense Israelites who were quietly watching him. He must have told Goliath, because he was waiting in the valley, and the Philistines were down there too, cheering, yelling.
Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I am not afraid. You are with me.
What did David know?
The Lord was with him.
And now Goliath looked at him with wide, surprised eyes, like the king, if it was in disbelief. David was calm. He looked face to face with the bear and saw its surprised look too. King Saul and all the others just didn't understand, but he knew, because what did David know?
The Lord was with him.
Goliath looked in disbelief. David didn't have any armor or a weapon. This actually made him really mad, and he roared, "Why are you coming at me with sticks? So you think I'm only a dog?" He threatened to tear him into pieces, but he knew. What did David know? And he said, "You are coming to fight against me with a sword and a spear and a shield, but I'm coming against you in the name of the Lord who rules over all. This very day the Lord will hand you over to me. Then the whole earth will know there is a Lord God in Israel. And all those who watch will know that the Lord does not give victory with the sword and the spear. The Lord will help us with this battle."
Your shepherd's rod and staff comfort me.
Goliath, with his heavy armor, moved slowly toward him. David ran up toward Goliath, like David ran up to the bear to protect the sheep. David was feeling good. It was similar to the time that he was anointed with oil. Warm oil was poured over his head, and it flowed down over his head and dripped down onto his body. It was something overwhelming. It was a really good feeling. He felt that now, just now, he was really confident in the presence of his enemy, especially because, as before, he knew. What did David know? He will always live with the Lord forever.
You would prepare a feast for me in front of my enemies. You pour oil over my head. My cup runs over.
David already had his sling out with a stone in it. David stopped, swung the stone around and around above his head, and let the stone fly out. The stone hit Goliath on the forehead and sank into him. Goliath fell to the ground on his face with a loud thud.
I am sure that your goodness and love will follow me throughout the rest of my life.
All of Israel now knows what God has delivered them from the strong enemies. And they also know in Israel what David knew. And what did David know?
And I will live in the house of the Lord forever.
The story of God.